effect tomorrow, with one clinic in that state saying they're seeing twice as many patients before the law moves the ban on abortions from 15 weeks of pregnancy to 6. Florida, of course, is just one of the latest states to crack down on abortion since the overturning of Roe versus Wade a couple years ago. You have some critics concerned that the whole South is on the brink of becoming an abortion care desert, especially if you look at this map, right? You can see that banned chunk in red. Marissa Parra is in Jacksonville, Florida with more. You've been at a clinic there for most of the day. Give us a sense of what you've been seeing and hearing.
Hey, Hallie. So we've actually had a chance to visit 2 different abortion care clinics, one in Fort Pierce, Florida. That was yesterday, and now we're here in Jacksonville. And I can tell you, after not just visiting those 2 clinics, but talking to way more than that. I mean, we're talking about double digits. I've talked to clinics around the state to kind of get a sense of how they were feeling ahead of tomorrow's deadline. And I think the consensus is there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of frustration. And I think that the woman that we spoke to today, she's the director here at this clinic outside. We're outside of a Woman's Choice in Jacksonville. She got very emotional describing what she was saying. She's not prepared to have to turn away patients for the first time that she's been the clinical director here. Take a listen.
Tomorrow is going to look very different. We're not going to have as many on the patients on the schedule. A lot of patients will come in for their consult and be told that we can't see them. But we are not going to close. We are going to stay open, and we're going to fight our way through this.
So I will point out that every single clinic director that I've spoken to for abortion care clinics has gotten very emotional describing the moment that they would have to turn patients away. It's just not something that they say that they're used to doing. And Hallie, something that I want to point out here. So we talk about the 6-week abortion ban going into effect tomorrow, but today actually began the process of turning patients away, because here in Florida, there's a 2-visit rule. So you have a consultation one day, then you have to wait at least 24 hours. The next day, at soonest, you can get the medication or the procedure that you need, which means if you were 6 weeks along for your consultation today, they would have turned you away and recommended you go to a different state. And Hallie, final thing I'll point out, all of them talking about how they have many women coming in who don't even realize they are 6 weeks along.
Marissa, you said something that I think is important, like a thread we got to pull on here. You said they're recommending that in certain instances, some women go to a different state. Let me pull that map back up, because we were talking about it right as we were coming to you here in the show. If you look at where Florida is, and you look at some of those bans, and I'll have our control room pull this up, where some of those bans are now since Roe versus Wade has been overturned here, you can see it, right? Florida there, the current, of course, rule, 15 to 18 weeks, but after May 1st, you can see that, and it's that 6-week ban. You look at Alabama, you look at Georgia, you look at South Carolina, you look at Mississippi, you even go to Louisiana or up to Tennessee or even to North Carolina. It is the idea, the recommendation of going to a different state, Marissa, it's not as simple as simply crossing the border.
And Hallie, I couldn't hear the last part of your question just now, but I believe you were saying that it's not a simple process, and it's not. I will point out that even here in Jacksonville, we heard that there were women that they were trying to get in the last second from Mississippi, from Louisiana, which you can look at that map, have far stricter laws. And so now these clinics are talking about having to recommend women go to places like North Carolina, like Virginia, which have looser abortion laws. I'll also point out, we did speak to one of the co-sponsors of the 6-week ban. And he was saying, of course, anyone that is supporting the 6-week ban is going to be happy about the fact that tomorrow this 6-week ban goes into effect. But he had said something that I thought was really interesting. He said that tomorrow ends the, quote, abortion tourism industry. So for them, many of the Florida conservative legislators were very frustrated by the fact that people were crossing state lines to get abortion care procedures here in the state of Florida, saying tomorrow that ends. Hallie.
Marissa Parra, live for us there in Jacksonville. Marissa, thank you so much. Appreciate your reporting, as always. Still to come here on the show, LeBron James' days as a Laker could be numbered. The decision he says he's not planning to make just yet, but when it could come.
Better allergy relief for better boyfriending. Live Claritin Clear.
So have you heard about these big questions lingering tonight over what LeBron James wants to do next season? That's after the Lakers got knocked out of the playoffs last night. LeBron has what you might consider not terrible options. He could stay with the Lakers for something like $50 million a year, or decide to be like, let me see what the other teams have to say. Here he is in his post-game news conference.
Tonight, was there any thought at all that, this could have been your last game with the Lakers?
I'm not going to answer that. Appreciate it.
Ooh, a little cagey there from LeBron. Now remember, he's also said that family would be a big part of his decision. His son, Bronny, who played a year at USC, has declared for this year's draft. James has talked about playing with Bronny before he retires. One thing he did make clear, his next big basketball focus is going to be on the Olympics. We know for sure he'll be taking his talents to Paris. Question is, what does he do after that? Steve Patterson is following this for us from Lakerstown, California. What are the options on the table for LeBron?
I'm making this post, Hallie, to ask for forgiveness because I'm going to say one of the most tired cliches in all of sports reporting, which is that the ball is entirely in LeBron's court, right? He has the final to make, just walk away. He's making the final decision here. And I think a lot of analysts and sports reporters are breaking it down as something that's binary, right? Two decisions. One, do you want to be comfortable? Or two, do you want to really win? One being comfortable, which would be remaining in Los Angeles playing for the Lakers, right? His whole family is here, as you pointed out. Not only Bronny, but his other son, who also plays basketball, his daughter, his wife. He's comfortable in LA, but is that the team that is really going to win the championship? It doesn't really feel likely. The other option is to try to win the championship, which would likely mean to move somewhere else that has a better shot. So you look at the options, right? Oklahoma City is one such team. They are torching the league, and they're doing it under the salary cap, which means they would have room for LeBron's salary, potentially. Unfortunately, is a guy like LeBron James really going to play in Oklahoma City? Probably not. So another team that people are looking at are the Clippers. If you're not a sports fan, the Clippers are the other Los Angeles basketball team. Less talked about, certainly less cool. But as far as I checked, last checked, they have one of the richest owners in all of team sports in the world. They are building a new arena. They could maybe put pieces around LeBron, keep him in LA, and potentially draft his son Bronny to get him to play with LeBron. And make no mistake about it, that is one of his bucket list items, to play in the NBA on the same team with his son. It's his objective, but is another objective to win another championship. He said that. Now it's really, again, the ball is in his court to make up his mind on which decision he wants to choose.
It's drama, Steve. We're going to be talking about it, I know, until he does make some kind of a decision, which could be, months away. Steve Patterson in LA. Roll out those sports cliches anytime you want, man. We love it. We love to see you. We love to hear it. We'll take it any day. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate you. That does it for us for this hour. We've got a lot more coverage picking up right now. Tonight, a boiling point at Columbia University as the school threatens to kick protesters out of one of the school's buildings and maybe out of the school altogether. We expect the mayor and the NYPD to speak any minute. We're going to bring that to you live.
It's easier this time.
Cannabis to put it on par with Tylenol instead of heroin. How that could open the door for critical medical research and make things perhaps easier for marijuana businesses. Plus, in tonight's breakdown, Israel may launch its full-out assault on Rafah any day now. What that means for the elusive two-state solution many think is our only path to peace. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and as we're coming on the air, we've got a dramatic situation happening at Columbia. We've got New York's mayor and the NYPD getting ready to address the situation there. You're looking live now at the lectern where they will speak. We're going to bring it to you live the second that it happens. This is after protesters occupied one of the university's buildings overnight. We're talking about Hamilton Hall. It is just steps away from the south lawn of the school. You see it on the map here, where students initially set up their main encampment. Want to show you some of the scenes that we saw overnight. Watch. You saw protesters there smashing windows, blocking others from going into the building. Now, there's a new encampment set up, and it's here where you see it on the map, right? So there's Hamilton. That's where the sort of protesters are in that building. This was the initial encampment. This is the new one. And the whole thing has some students very much on edge. Watch.
I mean, people that aren't living on campus no longer have access to it. I mean, I got several calls from my parents this morning asking for me to come home. I think I might be obliging them. It's unbelievable.
I want to bring in Antonia Hilton, who is live for us at Columbia University in New York. Guad Venegas is at the University of Texas in Austin. Antonia, let me start with you here as we are waiting to hear from the New York mayor, from the NYPD. The question at hand, right, is whether or not Columbia will issue some kind of a trespass order that would allow police to come in and work to clear the building. Do I have that correct? I mean, is that the potential for what we could hear?
That's right. And we're trying to read the tea leaves here on the ground. What I can tell you for sure is that there is a growing NYPD presence right outside of Columbia, right by Hamilton Hall and the gates to enter campus. And we're seeing not just your regular on-the-beat cops. We are seeing supervisors, captains, people with public affairs. There are officers flying drones up above Hamilton Hall right now. There are also officers that have a legal marker on the back, suggesting that they're folks who work with the legal team at the NYPD. And so what are they here to do is the major question. Are they part of the negotiations that we're hearing from some faculty members are sort of restarting in some ways? That there are some people trying to get back to a table to try to de-escalate and to talk. Is the NYPD playing a role in that? Or are they gearing up for what some students and what certainly some people connected to the administration have wanted, which is for the NYPD to put an end to this and to get the students out? I can tell you it has been tense here for everyone on all sides of this issue. We even spoke to a mom who came to pick her child up and just felt like this was the last straw. Clearly things had gone too far here at Columbia. Take a listen.
Uneasy and uncertain are probably the two best ways to explain it. They're not scared. I mean, the kids that aren't part of the protest, they don't. She doesn't seem to be scared. Breaking into Hamilton last night is a step in the wrong direction, so that's why we're going to grab our stuff and get out of here.
I've spoken to a group of faculty members who are very concerned about what could happen physically to students if the NYPD enters. They've seen the scenes of what's happened all over the country in the last several days. They, of course, were present and observed what happened to students when about 100 or so Columbia students were arrested the first time around. And so some of them are visiting, they're walking by, they're trying to keep an eye on what happens tonight because even they are getting that feeling that the students and administration have, which is that something in the conversations over this question of how the university is going to handle conversations with the protesters, something about that needs to be resolved imminently. Hallie.
This has had obviously an incredibly intense impact on campus, not just for the folks involved in the demonstrations, for the students involved in the protest, but for others as well, with the suggestion that some students are going to move out because of what's happening. Tell me what you're hearing.
Yeah, this has actually been happening now for about 2 weeks. There are Jewish students that have been leaving campus, going home, finishing up all their classes online because they found the encampment to be intimidating. Some of them reported threats and harassment. And then there are students who are on the pro-Palestinian side who have at times been very fearful because of that initial entrance by the NYPD. And the one thing, I'll tell you, Hallie, that's very interesting, that it seems parents, faculty members, and students on all sides of this agree on, is that the administration, in a way, is at fault for the confusion and the tension that's very much present on the ground. The NYPD is actually now asking us to move our spot, so we'll see what's about to happen, Hallie.
All right, I was just going to say, I heard those sirens behind you, Antonia. We're going to let you go. I'd like it if you can. We'll ask you and your producer to maybe hop on the phone in case we get more from the mayor, from the NYPD. Good luck. Thank you. Guad Venegas at UT Austin. Obviously a less active scene as we're watching those police officers walk right behind Antonia there. I want to see if we can bring our control room up to show a live picture of that news conference. I just want to make sure it hasn't begun yet, Guad, because it does seem like that could potentially bring a big headline as it relates to what's happening in New York. Okay, you still see the flags. It's still an empty room. People have gathered in the room, Guad. But this is, an indication that while Columbia may be the epicenter of the tensions here, it is not the only place in the country where you are seeing these issues on college campuses. It's happening coast to coast, including in Texas.
Hallie, every university has to deal with these issues in a different way, right? The dynamic here has been different. We've had about a week of protests. The first one was that walkout where we saw the state troopers get called in. A large number of people were arrested. And there were a lot of people criticizing the university's president and the officials because they decided to bring in the state troopers right away. A lot of those individuals that were arrested last week were eventually released. The charges were dropped. And then we had protests into the end of last week that police observed at a distance that were peaceful, and that happened all in the same area, right? But then yesterday, Monday, the protesters arrived with tents, and it seems like it was the tents that triggered officials here to call in the state troopers once again. They came in yesterday, and we know today that about 79 people were arrested. So this morning, we've had protesters outside of the jail asking for those individuals to be released, and another group gathering here for what they call a teach-in. This is where students and members of the faculty get together and they discuss on what to do next. But we should keep in mind that they are calling for a protest tomorrow, which we expect to be large. We'll have to wait and see how the university reacts to that and what the students do, and if they end up bringing the tents back into this area. Hallie?
Quad Venegas live for us there in Austin. Quad, thank you. So that news conference that we've been anticipating about 8 minutes ago has not started yet. We'll bring it to you live when it happens. But in the meantime, we'll take you a little further south in Manhattan, downtown, where we are hearing directly from the lawyer for Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, the women at the heart of former President Trump's criminal trial. And the prosecutors, they have brought receipts. The big witness today, Keith Davidson, a lawyer for Daniels and McDougal during that 2016 campaign when these allegations of affairs started floating around. Davidson, you see him there, he's the guy who negotiated these six-figure so-called hush money payments for both women through both the National Enquirer, the tabloid, and Michael Cohen, Mr. Trump's former fixer. Now, Davidson, in one exchange with prosecutors, saying that he understood the payments coming from Cohen were actually coming from Donald Trump himself. You see it there. He says, where did you understand the money would be coming from? He says, from Donald Trump. All of it coming after a fiery morning where the judge directly threatened the former president with jail time, fining him $9,000 for what he said on Truth Social, his social media platform. The judge said that stuff violated the partial gag order that was meant to stop the former president from attacking people involved in the trial. Interestingly, the judge seemed to lament that he couldn't put a bigger fine in place, something more, as he put it, commensurate with the wealth of the defendant. But since he can't, the judge says jail may be a necessary punishment if Donald Trump keeps crossing the line. We're going to get the legal breakdown from Danny Savalos in a sec, but let's start outside court with Laura Jarrett live in downtown Manhattan. Big look today, Laura, at these text messages between Keith Davidson, that attorney, and the former head of the National Enquirer. It's all the back and forth over these hush money payments. That is central to this case. Explain why.
So, Holly, today was really about scene setting. Keith Davidson, as you mentioned, is the lawyer for both Stormy Daniels, whose hush money payment or alleged hush money payment is at the center of this, but also Karen McDougal. And so he's allowing the prosecutors to tell this story, and they're doing it today through text messages that David is exchanging with a person who was at the head of the National Enquirer. And he says all the way back in June of 2016, I have a blockbuster Trump story for you. And it's basically him setting up how this all came to be. We had David